for the 4. Prescott. Throws, crossing, it's caught for the touchdown! It's Tolbert! Stays in the game and grabs it for the score!
You know, some of it was lack of execution by us. Some of it was top quality execution by them. We own it. We got to be better. You know, you +3 in some of those instances, man. It shouldn't come down to that. So we didn't do a lot of things well enough to secure victory, no doubt. You know, I just thought early on, man, I didn't think that we were connected enough from a communication standpoint. They paced us a little bit. But a lot of that's got to do with Dak, you know. He's a veteran guy. He's good in those moments.
All right, good morning, everybody. Steelers losers last night, 20-17. Dallas offensively moved up and down the field. Look at the yardage totals, and then 2 15-plus play drives in the fourth quarter, which can't happen. Dallas fans would argue they're paying their quarterback $65 million, and he needs to make those plays. I would argue that the defense, the highest paid in the league, they need to get off the field. Fan Morning Show brought to you by Guardian Protection, your hometown home and business security company. The offense also put up 226 yards, which was fewer yards by my count than even any games during the Kenny Pickett, Matt Canada era. So the offense, really not good enough. First half, real bad. Defense, bent. Didn't break all game until they couldn't afford to break, and they did. So, Dorin, as we sit here now in our first reaction, we blaming the offense more? We blaming the defense more? Do we really even need to do that? Just a bad performance? How you feeling?
Just a bad performance. Offense couldn't score any points. They couldn't run the football against one of the, worst run defenses in the league. They had two of their best players out, Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence. They were out of the game. Like, they did not play. You would think that Najee Harris, after what happened last week and being called out last week by a Colts player of being soft, would have had a better performance than he did. Now, he led the team in receiving, which is bad, but I guess you could say it's good for Najee, but it's bad for the team. If he's leading your team in receiving.
It's no good, man.
And then the defense, you're going against a team that could not run the football through the first, 4 games of the season. They do not have a running back. His name is Rico Dowdell. And you make him look like Emmitt Smith. And 92 yards rushing. I think he had 27 yards receiving. He had a receiving touchdown at that. The real issue to me is the amount of players after the game, the amount of defensive players after the game saying that there were communication issues, because that was the same story last week.
Yes, it was.
The same exact story last week. And I'm here to tell you that defense is defense. It's complicated in the NFL because it's the highest level, but it's still defense. You still have to drop, you still have to blitz, and you still have to cover man-to-man. Like, you know where you need to drop, you know where you need to blitz, and where you need to end up. I'm not saying it's not complicated, because it obviously is, but it's not that complicated. There should not be communication issues at this point in the season, and it's the second week in a row. That is very worrisome, very, very worrisome. That's my biggest takeaway, is the fact of, the defensive players not even being together and having separate interviews saying, communication issues. Like, what?
I'm with you, and consider that Dallas turned the ball over 3 times, and the Steelers wound up with a turnover on the sheet, but it was the last play of the game when they're doing the weird Stanford band on the field deal. Really, you win the turnover battle 3-0, and you still lose the football game. I think that underscores just how dominant Dallas really was in this game. I think Dallas kicked their ass, and it wasn't so much reflected on the scoreboard, though they did win the game. Dallas was the much better team in this one. Much better team. And Tomlin, the timeout issues late in the game, we'll get into that. We'll get into the George Pickens drama. Of course, we have to get into that. I was expecting a great offensive performance. We had seen the offense get better week by week. The Chargers game, really encouraging. The Colts game, they weren't able to finish the job, but you thought, okay, Justin Fields looks really good. They scored touchdowns on 3 straight drives. They're warming to this thing, and they're playing a defense, as you mentioned, didn't have their best 2 players. And you can't get it done? You can't run the ball? You had 4 yards of play? You had 226 total yards of offense? You threw the ball for 134 yards? You should have been able to name your score in this game.
Right.
And look, Dallas, I think Zimmer's a good coordinator. I think he's a good motivator. You know, they're pissed off for greatness. They want to bounce back. They know what everyone's been saying about them. And you've got this collective mentality, I'm sure, when you don't have your best guys. We all need to be 10% better today. And that's a real thing. That happens at every level of football. We got to be out there playing at our best as a collective because we don't have our dogs out here today. But it's a personnel game, too. And you should have better players because you're healthy. You're not all the way healthy. The Steelers have their own injuries. But you should have better players. You should be able to execute. You should be able to put up more than 17 points at home. And they couldn't. So I'm sort of torn. Is this the offense's fault? Is it the defense's fault? The reality is it's both. They were bad on both sides of the ball. And you spot Dallas 3 points at the beginning of the game with bad special teams play. I know the Steelers blocked a field goal, so you kind of make up for it there. But you let them have the return right at the start of the game. This Aubrey cat is one of the best kickers, maybe the best kicker in football. And you know if they cross the 50, they're getting points. There were elements on all 3 sides of the ball, elements of coaching. The Steelers not even close to bringing their A game. And that is atypical for a Tomlin team when the world's watching.
Yeah.
And I bet you the ratings, the lightning delay will affect it. But you have millions and millions and millions and millions of eyeballs. Usually you get your best from a Tomlin team, and you didn't really get it in any side of the ball, any phase.
And the number one thing for an NFL player or an NFL coach is identify weaknesses and exploit weaknesses. And what the Dallas Cowboys offensive line did was throw on that film against the Colts and watch that defensive line of the Steelers get pushed around and say, you know what, we haven't ran the ball well this year, but we can against the Steelers.
Pathetic.
And they out-physicaled them, too.
Yes, they did. I called them soft
TV.
all week.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. And they were the more physical team up front because they knew they could be, because they saw it happen the week before.
That's the second week in a row that the Steelers, to your point, got out-physicaled. And that's what they're supposed to bring every game. We're going to let you hear Justin Fields, some of the stuff he said after the game. We'll let you hear that. Talking about identity. The identity of this football team is they're supposed to be more physical on both lines. And they're young on the offensive line. I get that. They're supposed to be more physical still. When you're gonna dress 47 tight ends and you're gonna have 5 tight ends on the field at all times, you got to be physical. And they weren't. Dallas blew up a ton of their running stuff. And Najee Harris, I thought, when he got the ball in space, he was pretty good in this game. Second week in a row that was the case. But running the football, boy, that's who they want to be. They can't run the football right now, man.
No.
And you got Sayamalu back, and he had one of the worst reps of his entire career. You would have to think on that forced fumble of Justin Fields, a lot of bad. So where do you place the blame? We'll start there with you at 412-928-9370. You can text us, brought to you by Edgar Snyder & Associates, a personal injury law firm, where they always say there's never a fee unless we get money for you. You can tweet us, brought to you by South Hills Kia Peters Township. Visit them at southhillskia.net. If I had to blame one side of the ball more than the other, look, I always wind up blaming the defense more. They gave up 445 yards. They gave up the game-winning touchdown drive. How many times did we see in critical moments of this game TJ Watt not on the field?
Mm-hmm.
And I do think some of that has to do with the offense not able to possess the football and play that complementary football. You're also allowed to get off the field. I don't know if the Steelers defense knows this. You're allowed to get off the field on third downs. Dallas was 9 of 15 on third downs. Dallas was 10 of 16 on possession downs because they went 1 of 1 on fourth down. 10 of 16. So we can talk about complementary football and how the offense didn't help the defense. Defense also didn't help the defense. You've got to get off the field on that final drive. And, hey, it all boils down to one play, but Mike Tomlin calls a timeout before that play.
Mm-hmm.
And you got the highest paid defense in the league.
Right.
Get off the field.
Yeah.
Get off the field. And they didn't.
Yep.